Раз, два.
Then, so my next question, would you like project-based learning first, or would you like digital native stuff first?
Sorry, you have also mentioned in your letter or materials that you mentioned something related to gamification.
To
Gamification.
gamification, yes, that will certainly be in the digital native content.
А можно
Yes.
без микрофона? Или
Okay.
вообще не будет слышно?
Тогда скажите это шеф-мозг, и я могу идти домой.
Хорошо.
So what are we doing first?
Do you need a microphone or?
Oh, let's have a microphone for fun.
Трансляция, кажется.
It's live stream.
Okay, so where must I stand? Where? What, but it's if it's live stream, if I move, it's going to be a problem. Да?
Just speak.
Okay, the microphone's better then. Да, это
Нет, здесь все занято.
Okay. So, thank you very much. Sorry, the messy start. I think we've got a few more people coming, so maybe some people will join us late. Please welcome them in. My plan is to do 2 talks with a little bit of a break in the middle. So we take altogether about 90 minutes. The lady here very confidently said, I want to hear something about gamification. If you want to hear something that I'm not mentioning or you've got a question, feel free to raise your hand and jump in at any time. I like to be a little bit interactive. It's a small crowd. I'm guessing it's the end of a busy day for you folks, so you're probably a bit tired, and we'll go down better if you get to ask questions. Just don't sit there and fall asleep, okay? So you know, let's all work together here a little bit on this, okay? So I'll move through one a fairly pacey way, and then I will give us a little 5-minute comfort break, and then we'll rock and roll towards the end, and then we're going to say a few things about EF to wrap up. So, there's no picture of me on this one. That's a shame. My name is Dr. David Bish. I am the Director of Academic Management. And if I get this clicker, I think it might get me. Because you don't know what I look like, right? Where do I point it? At you? Do. I can just nod my head and you can go forward. If I give you a thumbs up, can you do the next slide? Hey, oh, too fast. Go back. Great, stop. Should we risk that? Oh, he's back. Okay, right, we'll try with it. So that's me, in case you didn't recognize me. I am the Director of Academic Management from EF Education First. I work primarily with younger learners, but I work with teachers. I write books. I prepare teachers to teach our seasonal program, mostly in summers. We also have a winter program in Australia, which they call summer, confusingly. And we have several thousand students at any one time around the world, and I work with about 800 teachers right now. In English-speaking countries, we do teach other languages, but my role is primarily working with the English textbooks, the training of the English teachers, English-speaking teachers, that is, and running the quality of the English program throughout. I won't be talking just about junior learners. I'm going to be taking a step back and talk about some of my own research interests and general theory on teaching. I get to go around the world a lot and do a lot of teacher training and development. So I hope it's a reasonably good talk. Let us know at the end if it was terrible, all right? So that's me. I'm based in Zurich these days, so I had quite a long travel to get here. So it's very nice to be here in Russia and have some kind of fake Subway coffee. We're going to talk about the digital native first. And I'm going to jump straight in, I think. I wish. He's only able to show the first 2 slides. Can we go down? Super. Okay, next. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to talk about who a digital native is, how we teach them. I'll give you some strategies, but strategies that work both at an institutional level and at a more classroom-based level. We're going to talk about the motivations and skill set. Let's probably sneak in a bit of work on maybe gamification here. Okay, let's hope it works. And a couple of details on that, which are really the next few points that we're going to go through, leading us to BYOD. First of all, though, so what is the digital native? Digital native was thought of by somebody called Mark Prensky. Oh, look, he's gone. Mark Prensky was that was me, that was deliberate. Mark Prensky is a linguist and cognitive psychologist. I met him last year, in South America, and he's actually changed a lot of his ideas about what a digital native is. So we have to bear that in mind as it goes. But he first proposed the idea, the name of this thing, the digital native. When he first proposed it, he actually said something about our brains being wired differently these days. Right? So his initial assertion was that all of a sudden, after people being around for however many, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of years or millions of years people are supposed to be around, since 1980, our brains were rewired and reconfigured. He's since changed his mind on that because human evolution doesn't quite happen that fast. So it's more attitudinal. So some of the phrasing here has actually been revised by Prensky. That's worth saying straight off. But he said basically that the digital native is somebody who, typically born since about the 80s, is used to receiving information really fast. They like to parallel process. So they like several bits of information going on at once. And they like to multitask. They like to do different things at once. You're probably recognizing this already for some of your classrooms where the students sort of listening and texting at the same time and writing stuff down, or you've got teenage kids of your own. And, I am listening, I am doing my homework. Yes, but you're watching TV. I'm watching TV and I'm doing my homework. And, and doing this and that. So they're used to this constant stream of largely digital information and lots of different channels of this information coming in and taking it in parallel. They like to have graphics and images rather than words and texts that we're used to. I think we see that the biggest thing now since I actually made this slide. The fastest rising thing on social media right now is Instagram stories, I would say. And Instagram stories are basically videos. And more of the internet is now becoming video, an incredible amount. I don't know if you know this. 53% of the world, these figures are 2 days old, 53% of the world's internet is text written in English. 53%. That's 53% of the top 10 million websites. And there's an organization called Tech3 which checks the language and various other facts about the top 10 million websites every day. And the most visited websites in the world, 53% of those are written in English. But that is English text. And those are websites which are largely static. What's happening more and more is more of the world's content, and I'm sorry I haven't got a figure for you, is turning into video. And people post far more video and picture now than they do text. When we use WhatsApp, whatever, people post stickers and GIFs and things like that. They add to your ideas. One time many years ago, I worked in Russia. And we used to put smiley faces by putting a colon and a comma. And very interestingly, in Russia, you evolved your own. You forgot the colon and went for just, not a comma, end bracket. Right, so some of you will say happy smiley with just a curve. You show that to a kid, they say, what is that? Why isn't it a smiley face jumping around? Because nowadays, a modern phone user will actually choose an animated picture of someone rolling on the floor rather than a bracket. Why use a bracket? Because the technology has come on so much. So they're used to that, and that's natural. We're talking about people here since the 1980s, those digital natives, but now we even have tablet natives. Right? Kids being born now have always existed in a world where they have touchscreens. So very often, I don't know if you've done this one, you sort of walk to the computer with your son or daughter or a student, and they go like this. And they're amazed it doesn't move. In fact, most of my colleagues' laptops do. I've just got a cheap one. Thank you, EF. But of course, that does work on this. So there's this primacy of video information, pictorial information, and also I think it's not mentioned here, but this touch interaction is also part of the whole thing. And I mentioned random access, being able to grab things whenever you want, rather than that lovely old expression, he read the book from cover to cover. You know, I don't know if you guys still do that. When you read a report, you start at the beginning, work through the middle, and then come to the end. Apparently, your digital native's going to go, oh, what's interesting? Flick, flick, flick. Oh, that bit, right, read that, and that bit, right, done. You know, and they miss the others out. Maybe a really skilled one would look at the index and find which bits to work, but it's maybe that flicking through, which of course we do backwards, don't we? We flick from the back to the front. So there's no real order of the information. They just grab those nuggets of information that they want to have. And it's, again, working from the text here, instant gratification, instant reward. You know, oh, that's an interesting fact. Great, okay. I might try that out right now. I want to do that right now. And also, that has implications for study, because unless these guys get told, well done, straight away, they're not happy. Now, since the term the digital native's been out there, the other one which kind of comes into it is the millennial, right? And probably many of these things also apply to the millennial mindset. It's a little bit later on, but this idea of wanting to be given a sort of a pat on the back all the time, wanting to some quick, tangible results of everything that they do. So this is what Mark said is a digital native in 2001. As I say, he's revised it a little bit, but it's very instructive because it helps us to talk about groups of people together. And am I going to risk this, or can I use arrows? Let's use the arrows. There are 4 stages here, or 4 different populations. If they're natives, we imagine they're living in an island. And some of you are taking pictures of this. I will send you the PowerPoint afterwards. Very happy to do that. So there are digital refugees. A digital refugee lives away from the rest of the population of this island. They don't want to interact or touch digitals. I have colleagues like this who sort of, oh, David, could you log me into that, please? And could you find that image? I want a GIF. Could you do that jumping dog thing again? You know, but in fact, some of them are even further down. They're in denial. They're like, this is just a flash in the pan. This will not catch on. You know, I've worked with teachers like that for about the last 20 years. And we're still moving forwards, okay? So this is not, using technology in the classroom is not a flash in the pan. Then there are the digital voyeurs. Maybe that's a bit more like me. Kind of know stuff about it, but did you notice I can't use a flipping clicker? That's how useless I am. So I'm quite clever, but maybe I'm not entirely in. Then there might be the next phase, the digital immigrant. Like me, I wasn't born into a digital world. I'm not a digital native, but I try and learn stuff. So I think I sit somewhere between the participatory immigrant and the voyeur. And these are all things that Prensky talked about. And then there, of course, is the digital native who lives everything digital, experience everything through their phone, every conversation through their phone, every interaction is a picture, like many of you did. I've got a lovely PowerPoint there, but you want to take a picture of it and look at it like that. Because you make it bigger, right? Because you're used to making it bigger and saving it afterwards. And maybe some of you, it helps you remember that. And those are strategies that you've built, possibly not as natives, maybe as immigrants, but they're all things that technology enables us to do. So I just want you to have a friendly turn to the 1 or 2 or 3 people next to you. And if we consider this a cline, if we consider this a continuum, where do you sit? Where do you live? I think I would say I'm more or less slap bang in the middle myself. But where do you fit? Just turn to the person next to you. Just have a little go of that. And you can maybe discuss with the lady behind you. Где ресепция? Should we just do a show of hands? Let's just see how we are as a group of people. If you're watching this on the live stream, you can shout at your monitor. Okay? So, digital refugees. Any digital refugees? Pardon? Yeah. Some of them would like, yeah. A lot of people I know a few people who live in Russia and they're working abroad. They often call their grandparents on like video Skype or things like that, Facebook. So even our grandparents are delighted by the outcomes potentially. So maybe even they aren't in complete denial. Maybe they can't use it great. Okay, so very few digital refugees. How about digital voyeurs? A few of us know about it but don't really get involved. We know. Nobody? Okay, one. Wow. How about digital immigrants? And digital natives? I know the digital native thing kind of says something about your age as well, so it's a bit ageist. And I think this is another reason that Prensky updated his thinking. He talks now about competencies, how we get those digital competencies and strategies to do things. And there's a recognition that any of us can develop those more or less at any age, which for me is very important, because if I'm trying to train you or give you some thoughts about how you could do the same things as a digital native, it would be kind of pretty pointless if you were stuck at that end forever, right? So, of course, there is hope. So this isn't supposed to be just ageist. Fingers crossed. Yes. So I thought I'd start a little bit more with how not to reach the digital native, and then I'm going to, a little bit of a sanity check after this. I'm going to ask a question about France, and if anyone can tell me at the end of this what the connection between this video is and France, I will try and give a little prize to you. Okay, can we play it?
Okay, Edna, remember, if you can teach one kid one thing, then today will be a success. Now, class, please pay attention.
Text Uncle! Text Uncle!
Children, why do you all need cell phones?
Safety.
Emergency.
Safety. Educational.
Could you at least set them to vibrate? That's it. Everything in the box. No more gizmos in this class. They're all going in the drawer with the biology frogs.
Okay, we'll call your bluff. Teach us, using only the knowledge in your own head.
Hey, don't worry. We still have the good old classroom computer. Who wants to play word jammers?
My stroked out grandfather has more memory than that thing.
How's he doing?
Better, thanks.
How could Krabappel take my cell phone? I'm only on month 1 of a 60-month...
We could watch the whole episode. That was just the titles. How is Edna doing there? Successfully? Well, she got the phones off them, didn't she? Is that a strategy used in their classrooms? Yeah. Connection with France, anybody? Oh, yes. I think that was the cigarettes, wasn't it? There is something else. Yep. Last week, I think it was last week, so we'll sort you out a prize afterwards. Come see me. Last week, France have banned all mobile phone use in schools. Completely, nationwide. Previously, since 2010, there was actually a law in France and French schools that said the teacher or the school could stop a student from using a phone in class or take it away from them whenever they wanted. I paraphrase, but you were always able to do what Edna did there. But now, legally, unless the teacher has a sound pedagogic reason for using mobiles in a class, they should not be used in schools at all. So kids can't take mobile phones to schools in France. Right, so now, for me, if we're trying to reach the digital native, that's what I might call the ostrich approach. Sticking one's head in the sand and being rather that sort of, unknowing, not wanting to know that it's not very healthy, right? We're back there with the digital refugee, right? So Edna's running away from it. She's had a little bit technology she's used before, and I think quite interestingly, like a lot of teachers, that simplistic technology that she was using there, she had a lot of what I like to think of as control over how it worked and what it did. She was very comfortable with it. It was very safe, very simple. She knew how to turn it on and off. And there's only one of those computers in the classroom. She controls it and knows what the answers to pretty much every question is. It's a bit like a whiteboard, right? You write on it what you want. Or a projector. Even PowerPoints are quite safe technology as a teacher because you pretty much know what's coming up on the next click. If you're good at using a clicker, that is. Edna liked that kind of technology, but the stuff where kids can almost think independently and find something else out, like the video of the cat exploding or trying to communicate with text and stuff like that, can be a real nightmare of classroom control. And here we have to find a balance to reach the students, but potentially we have with mobiles in the classroom, which we miss with the ostrich approach, is something, I'll mention again at the end, is something called BYOD. Has anyone heard of that? I'm sure you have. Bring your own, the bottle? Yeah. Not bring your own bottle, bring your own something else? Yes. So bring your own device. School administrators love this, and we use it at Language Travel all the time. I was talking about this to some people earlier. We put Wi-Fi in the space, and then the students bring the technology. And students bring technology that they're comfortable with and that they can use. And if appropriately directed by the teacher, that can be quite a powerful way to get technology and its advantages into your class. And there are advantages, and I'll try and talk about them. So it's a little bit, my approach to reaching the digital native is, if you can't beat them, join them. Right? Or at least don't necessarily try and be one. Recognize that the students potentially have other strengths and abilities, and they can be experts in technology you don't know how to use. Right, so let me give you an example of what I mean. In our schools, we make a lot of videos. And we get students to make videos of the learning that they're doing and edit them together. And in the amount of time it takes most teachers to explain how to log in to a video system and edit some videos together and most of the kids in the class have already made 3 videos and posted them on the internet and got 10 likes. Because pretty much it's you pick up your phone, point it, press a couple of things, and you've done it. Because the technology is so easy to use these days, especially if it's your own piece of technology. So to some extent now, Edna there with her word jammers software, she knew how to use that very, very well. And she knew what it was good for. Something to do with the letter E, apparently. She knew what it was good for and how to use. I don't know why she was using that in a maths lesson, I agree, yeah. But with the other technology, you need to find ways in which the students can use the technology on a framework that you as a teacher set up. It's a little bit of a different level of control. It's not every button they're going to press and every outcome of what that button is going to be. Press one letter, it's got to be an E. They could be doing something far more sophisticated, which is a lot more individualistic. And that individualistic, that more instant gratification is where we start to satisfy our digital natives, where they can do things individually and creatively. Let's move forwards if this works. Good. So I've touched on some of these things already. So which of these matter most in a policy. If you're writing a policy for a school, like in France, what do you suppose is important? The learner motivation, potential for new ways to learn, learner autonomy, working as individuals, availability of and familiarity with ICT, or teacher flexibility. So if you're running a school and you're deciding, right, what kind of things do I want to work in my classroom? You know, what kind of technology do I want to allow? What kind of activities do we want to have? Maybe we're talking BYOD not. Maybe we're talking using computers or not. Which of these things do you think have to come first? Again, let me just give you 30 seconds just to discuss that little list with your students. And we'll just see what ones you think are more important for learning. So just talk to the person next to you. Have a little think. Sorry, ICT is information computer technology. So technology, basically. Would anybody like to, sorry, I shut you all up then by speaking. Would anybody like to shout out what they think is maybe the key one there? Are they in that order, or is there anything more important than another? Availability of the tech. And that's certainly been the case in the past. Potentially, if it's about availability, that BYOD strategy is quite handy because you just need to get the Wi-Fi in there. In fact, I say that, I don't know, in Russia, is Wi-Fi pretty cheap? Do most of your students come with Wi-Fi plans and they can get their own data? Yeah, so they can get online if they want to in class. So it doesn't cost the school anything to have the technology. So we suddenly end up with the technology is available. Yes, but I'm saying are most of the students able to access data quite cheaply anyway? I mean, is that something typically most of your students have? I don't know the case in Russia at the moment. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now with data becoming cheap, possibly many of our students have it. Not all. Okay. Any other things you would put at the top? Yes. I'm sorry? Okay. Would you like to speak to that at all? Beautiful. I love your point. I think it's really good. So we used to speak a few years ago of something called blended learning. So blended learning, now it's more typically called hybrid learning, is a combination of amount of time spent on an electronic device and amount of time spent in a classic classroom setting. And these are typically blended by schools and universities, mixed to complement face-to-face time with increased time using technology beyond the classroom. That allows us to get the learners spending more time learning. And typically with blended learning used to apply mostly to things like universities, where you had a bit of face-to-face, like tutorials and things like that, and some self-study at home. Now what's actually happened, a number of organizations and teachers have moved blended learning closer to the classroom. So we have concepts like the flipped classroom from Bergman and Sams, who kind of went, right, we're going to get some fun homework, and we're going to do the fun homework first, and then the kids are going to come into class. And I don't even use the technology in the class, but I get the kids to, you saw the biology frogs, right? They weren't allowed the biology frogs, so they've got to watch videos of someone else cutting up a frog. So, okay, kids, here's a link to a video of a frog being cut up. Watch that, and then come in and discuss some of the key things you saw being taken out of that frog. Sorry if you didn't have dinner. But so in class, they're able to move forward with exciting things happening out of the class and discussion in class. Often very boring things happening outside the class. But it gets the kids to take some input, and then in class you can have more interaction. So now that is getting the learner closer to class. But I think what you were talking about is something that I like to call, or at least I called in my thesis, new term, I invented this, please write it down, put it all over the internet, microblending. Okay? You're hearing this for the first time. Microblending is the idea where a teacher who has enough available technology and resources can decide, you know what, this activity, let's go on the internet. This activity, we'll use the laptop in the corner. This activity, we won't do anything. And that choice from the prevalence, the notion of being able to do that has been around for years. Right? We've been talking about this since about the 1970s. The guys who, Apple have actually been talking about this since the 1970s. But now, there's enough technology to actually do this, especially if all the students have technology in their pockets. So all you need to do is to be able to point them to the right tools, a few good links, and you can potentially turn the things on. I'm not going to do this, but put your hand up if you've ever done a Kahoot. There we go. All the time, yeah? And hello, fancy meeting you here. So we often add in a Kahoot as a way of testing our classes because it fits nicely. Kahoot, of course, nice example of gamification, bit of motivation, gets all the students working together, spices up a lesson, and we choose when to do it. And there are lots of other tools. Let's try this. I did a demonstration lesson just now, and in my demonstration lesson, I had a bunch of things, but I also decided I was suddenly going to do a listening. So I actually have, these are all the course books that I write, and I have the audio for all of the course books on my phone. And probably like many of you, I don't have it here, but I have a speaker. Right, so I can just kind of do exactly what I do on Spotify and just play the audio track from any of my books at any time. This one, of course, is loading slow just to help me prove the point. Let's try a shorter one. Back on screen. I seem to have lost my connection, which is just really proving a nice point for me. I'm determined to prove this will work, so I'll play it in a second. But if I have this and I'm in my class, anytime I can play any audio. It's less fiddly than using, let's say, a CD player. I can get the tracks straight up, I can see what the tracks are on the screen, and I can play them and beam them to my speaker. It looks like the internet has gone a bit slow on me here, so that's a good example of needing better data. But it'll select, it just won't play. I'll try and do that later, or it'll start when I'm not wanting it to. So I can suddenly play an audio track. Maybe, for example, the teacher knows a good video. Maybe in discussion, a student suggests a video. They show it on... I told you it was going to do that. So it's a social media unit. So we can dive in and out. We can microblend and use the technology when we want. Obviously, we need to know a little bit about the conditions of the room, whether we've got a projector, which tools we have, but then we can selectively use them. Or hand over the control of the tools to the students. Yeah, obviously, it works much better when you're in your own space, but you don't have to know how to use every single tool because potentially the students are using them. So you might use Kahoot. If any of you use Kahoot, have you had your students write quizzes? Yeah, two of you, yes. I guess the other very popular one is Quizlet. Someone said this last time we were talking here. And again, maybe you get the students to write the flashcards and then you repurpose them different ways and so So that to me is an example of microblending. That's the teacher choosing the different things and fitting them into their pedagogy, which is really enhanced if, I'll say this again, I can't say this enough, if the mobile phones are allowed to be in the room. If the mobile phones are out of the room, you've lost the chance to do that. You've only got one screen and everybody working the same way. No learner autonomy, no individualization, no different strategies. And this fits with something which is not on these slides. It fits with building 21st century skills. And we hear this all the time at the moment. I didn't see any nods. Do you hear this all the time in Russia? Just about every conference I go to, one person says Quizlet and the next person says 21st century skills. Is that a few nods? Okay, at least one nod. So 21st century skills typically are about creativity, communication, collaboration, critical thinking is in there as well, group work, teamwork. And these are the learning that isn't about linearized thinking. This is the learning that isn't about rote learning, memorization of facts. This is the way that, I don't know, that society believes we are heading towards to keep people employed and work with the new jobs and the new kind of future we are in the 21st century. Because the 21st century is already here, of course. And the people, the citizens of the 21st century are, of course, our digital natives. So, I've already said this one. We need some strategies that fit with what the digital native needs. Okay? And I'll try and come back to that point on 21st century skills. So I've already said we want to give them rich input. We want to give them to Kahoots. We want to give them audio and video, not just text, not just stuff written on the board to copy down, you know. And we want to actually also work with them. We talk about learner autonomy, but students like those kids in the Simpsons video very often can't cope. They need some strategies so that they sort of can ration the different streams of media from time to time to focus. So we need to focus on helping students focus. Right? So that's a learning skill. So we need to teach more learning skills. This will mean, for example, I do something very simple in my classrooms. I have a laminated card. On one side, it's got a green telephone with a big tick, and I flip it over, and on the other side, it's got a red telephone with a big cross. Some people use traffic lights, and they have an orange one in the middle. I couldn't find a three-sided piece of paper, so I use that. So, and I just put it there and flip it back and forth. And because sometimes I say no, that does help. It sort of build focus as we go. So helping the students cope as you go along. Some things aren't for phones and some things are. I did, like I said, I just taught a little demonstration lesson. And there was one lovely little chap. I sat down in the corner there working away. And he and his partner, I wrote on the corner of the board, I said, right, A to Z, I put A, B, C, and Z at the bottom. And I said, right, I want a city beginning with each letter. Okay, and I'd already said to them, you can use your phones whenever you want. Right, ABC, ... Z. And I then started the activity, and I had to put cities. And I walked around the class, and he was, oh, it's hard. And don't worry, you know, can do it. How many letters in the alphabet? 26, good, get going. Came back round, and he had his phone out. And he wasn't cheating, but he had a picture of the alphabet. Just the English alphabet, you know, because he's got all the Russian letters in his head. So, and that was just to help him, just enough support so that he could still do my task, which was come up with names of international cities. So he'd realized how much he needed the technology for and just used it. And he and his partner were looking at that together and working. So in that case, it was helping them focus, but there are times when you don't want them to use it. I'm sure you've all had stories like this. But one of my colleagues, a guy called Ian, I don't know if Ian's seeing the live stream here, Ian was full of this at work the other day. His son, quite young son, had some school homework, which was like, what is 3 + 4 was the first thing on the page. I can't remember the rest, but they were all simple sums like that. What is 3 plus 4? And his son came home, oh, Daddy, I've got this, I can't do it on my own. He was like, don't worry, I'll help you. So he made him some orange squash, and they sat down somewhere quiet. He put a little bit of music on. He got some paper and pencils out, sat down together and said, right, okay, let's listen, and now you can do this. We can answer these questions. And the little boy said, okay, I've got it, Dad. Okay, I'll do this. And he's like, okay, so you can do it then. I'm not going to help. See if you can do the first one. And he said, Alexa, what is 3 plus 4? And Ian was telling this story all day. I think that's brilliant, but there are times when we have to not rely on Alexa to do everything for us. So we've got to help the kids focus and draw lines with that. But actually, in terms of original thinking, that's great. Hey, if we've got computers that can do some of these simple tasks, do you use calculators in lessons in Russia in school? No? Do you use abacuses in? You don't? Yeah, there are some lessons where they use abacuses, right? I've seen them, yeah. That's a calculating machine, just the same thing. Yeah, can't count to more than 10 without your fingers unless you take your shoes and socks off, right? We've been using technology in some way for years. There was a time, way back, there was a time when people actually complained about the use of paper in schools. Right? And that is a real thing. You can read up on that. Google that. Okay. There was also a time when videos first came into schools, and teachers complained that using a TV in a classroom was too complicated. There's probably not a single person here that's never used a video in a lesson now. It's just become normal. So we need to get this stuff normal. We need to help the students cope. We need to give lots of feedbacks to students. So the student who was using the strategy well with the A to Z, give them feedback on that. But we also, remember we talked about instant gratification. We want to make sure the students are regularly praised for things they do and notice their progress. So this means giving them goals and targets, and this is where we come back to gamification on points. I'll show a bit more disruption. Right, disruption is where you don't do the same thing every day. You do it a little bit different. If you're a linear thinking, every linear person, every lesson being exactly the same beginning, middle, and end, sort of plenary, board work, questions, homework. But that's fine. But apparently the digital natives aren't very comfortable with that. So we need to vary things, otherwise we lose them, attention-wise. So disruption, that also means stuff like choice. I tried that out at the beginning of this lesson, little thought experiment. I asked what people would like first. Everyone was terrified. Yeah? That was like, no, you tell us, David. What do you want to do? Okay. But with the digital natives, give them some choices. What unit would you like to do today? Which way would we do this activity? Should we do it as a watching or a listening? Are we going to write our answers or are we going to speak? So try and give some variety. So engage the students with something unexpected. So motivation. As we've already said from Prensky, this isn't super clear. Quick responses. Control, following interests, personalized, thinking differently, getting information about the world, and being socially connected. These are all things that work for this generation. So, quick responses, instant gratification. If we're used to clicking things and you click a TV button, something happens, used to a like and a response on a text chat, that's what you want. You're also used to pressing the button yourself. Right, the students are used to having the mobiles in their hands, and if something's on the big screen and they can't touch it, they get fidgety. So we need to respond to that. Because they have so much control, they can also follow their interests. So it means that every student in the class isn't always focusing on the same thing, potentially. And we allow the student some element of choice. This is learner autonomy that we talked about before. That makes learning potentially personalized. With technology, we can do this. I'm going to come back to some sort of things that learners do well and things we can make progress from. But if a digital native is craving something that's individual and personalized, and we give them a chance to take that, they're going to be that much more motivated. if we can fit that into a teaching framework that works. So if you want the students to write an essay, always in the past we've chosen topics, or we've given them a choice of 2 or 3 topics. Same in a Cambridge exam, you've got 2 or 3 things you can write from. So there's no reason why not to do that with things like reading. And as I said earlier, what Stephen Krashen used to argue for quite a lot, extensive reading for pleasure beyond the classroom. Right? All the children will read Shakespeare and they'll read Charles Dickens. I'm afraid they probably won't if they really have a choice. They might follow a couple of blogs or watch some TV shows that they like, and they'll all watch very different things. So if you set something up where they can watch or listen to what they like and feed back in and do their book reports in that way, you can still harvest the language out of that. You can still structure that, but create lots of choice. And that can be choice in the classroom or beyond the classroom as well, the students learning at home. So thinking differently and puzzle solving, again, this is lots of project-based, lots of problems and tasks where they get to think critically, where they get to solve things in small groups. Where, if you remember back to Edna, right? Edna's, you had to put the letter E in the gap each time. That was all there was in word jammers. But in fact, something where the students can think, research, and look something up and come to their own unique solutions, and they're free to do that at any time, motivates them. Like our little chap suddenly going, oh my gosh, I don't know the English alphabet. Right, I'll just Google it, and I'll follow this set of pictures. Well, it was a beautiful looking alphabet. It was very pretty. Sorry. Second student on the left. Yeah. Only boy in that class, yes. Right. Big up to Michael. If you're watching, Michael, well done. So that was a good thing. And the students like to find out more about the world. So as language teachers, we're very lucky in that it's quite popular to bring in authentic material into the classroom. An authentic material, like real-world language, real learning, is often considered by people very tough to learn with. Now, it depends on what you make the task. So if the students are watching, example from today's lesson again, forgive me, if the students are looking at different videos, you say, choose a city. Right, okay, choose a city. I chose Copenhagen, I chose Paris, I chose New York. Okay, now go online, find an article about things to do in that city, a video, watch it, you can play it as many times as you like, and then tell the others the best 3 things to do. The students get a chance to look at that themselves. Now, you're not saying, okay, I want you to write down all the phrasal verbs in it, or underline the prepositions, or catch every word the person said, or whatever. You're giving them a much more global task where they get exposure to real language. And we can do that so much more easily with mobile phones, or with potentially homework where the students get to use that flipped classroom and go and look things up themselves. And it's motivating because it's personalized. Back to the problem solving, which I mentioned a couple of points earlier, if we let students make their own projects, we can also give them a chance to solve problems in their own ways, make something that they're interested in, and because they're interested in it themselves, because it's personalized, when they present what they've done to other students, they're a bit passionate about it. And the other students hear that passion and listen, and they actually genuinely share information. And that's what we want in the 21st century skills. So there are a lot of, actually, when you first think about the digital native, this kind of short-term mindset and flipping and changing around, actually the way that they're going is exactly something that works very well in language classrooms. So there's a lot of good ticks. Something very interesting, students these days are very worried about their social status. And this is another aspect of being a digital native. Everybody can see your profile. And people are texting each other, and even the President of America is very keen on how he tweets, right? And how he comes across. So it's a thing you do. So students are actually a little bit worried about projecting that right social status, which is also can be harvested quite well, because if you do in lessons how to come across well socially, how to ask good questions, how to interact well, that is something students can feel good about. So it builds their personal confidence. So personal confidence building can fit with language lessons. And that's my last point about gaining social capital. I really don't like the color of this slide. The next one's going to look the same color. So I'm actually going to skip that because it's the same information, just flipped over. So a couple of short strategies before I take a break. We set students micro goals when we're teaching them. So you need to very clearly, to focus students, give them little steps that they can take in their learning. Many of you probably already do this as you teach. So deductively, you get them to realize what they've got to do, but then look at breaking it down, to give them both control over what they have to do, and also give them a chance to realize, oh, I made some progress. You know, when we download something these days, you get a progress bar, right? And that progress bar keeps you waiting. It keeps you happy. You can see something's happening. Students want that now. They don't want the gratification of, okay, I'm going to do a Cambridge exam in 2 years. I'll get a nice job in 5 years. No, they want to know, oh, look, I moved on a bit. So we want to help them set micro goals by helping them realize, I've got to do this. How can I break it down? So that's a little bit of learner training. Another thing we can do is sprints. Again, to make things short-term and and fulfilling for the digital native, this is something they do in software design. Software design, if you've got a long task to do in agile software development now, rather than kind of go, okay, in a year's time, we're going to produce this wonderful product. They actually go, okay, in a week's time, we've got to get to here. In 2 weeks' time, we've got to get to here. In 3, and everything is focused on where we're getting to in this short-term goal. And kids like to think short-term. So this is also working with the 21st century mindset. This is also looking about getting the students to collaborate in setting their own goals, so getting them to be creative, critical, and realistic, and setting smart targets. I think you've heard of the idea of smart targets before. Have you? S-M-A-R-T? Okay, that's not on my slide. You can write that down. S-M-A-R-T, goals. You can look that up afterwards. Yeah, measurable is in there, just like this. And this is where the students have to define what they want to achieve, and they focus on that task, and they sort of measure their progress towards it. So we can do a lot with, I'm a very big fan of learner diaries. And these can be, if you like, if your students are super digital, they can maybe even be sort of a task list on their phone. Set stuff up like that. So use the technology that they like to use. So they have ticks and check them off that they've achieved things. So they focus on their goals and they measure steps along the way. That can be done very nicely in a learner diary where the students are, maybe they're checking off bits of the Common European Framework of Reference they've done, maybe they're checking off numbers of words of vocabulary and so on, but you get them responsible for some tracking and monitoring. This is more or less what gamification is about. Gamification is really a fancy way of looking at that progress bar and seeing how far you're along at it and making it fun. Right, so gamification, this is about points, leaderboards, and realizing, oh, I'm moving along, and building that gratification. And then something I talked about previously, I'm a little bit conscious of time because I said I was going to give you guys a break. So I'm going to stop at the end of this slide and come back with something as we go on. So I've jumped in a lot talking about technology in the classroom, things like Kahoot. Right? And I just said there, making a list on your mobile phone tasks that you've completed, you know, with the task list. And I said about this little chap deciding himself to look at the alphabet. So a lot of things you can potentially have in the classroom. And our colleague up there suggested that the teacher and the students might select what technology to microblend in there. Okay, I've got this bit of technology working all the time. I might use other things. So when we teach, one way we can look at the technology we choose to use is how it changes our task. how it changes our pedagogy. So this is where we look at 2 steps. There's just the simple enhancement of a task, or enhancement of any little bit of learning as students do, or whether we transform it. Now, we as teachers don't have to own every bit of technology that does it, but the methodology. For example, if I say to students, okay, I want you all to make a video. Now, I don't know, how long ago would this be? Maybe 10 years ago? There is no way I could have said to every student in my class, I want you to make a video, and they could do it. Let's say if I do that now, they've done it straight away. No, and then I have to work with, yeah, but not that kind of video. What I want you to do is, I have to set up the instructions carefully, because they just make one like that. Or show someone a picture on your mobile phone. Wallop, they've all got a picture. Right? These things are very easy to do now. So I don't have to actually decide what technology they're going to use, what video editor they use, what buttons they press. I'm just saying a very top-level description, make a video. Maybe I need to go back to micro goals, as I said. So I might say to them, okay, we're going to make a video. First, choose the topic. Next, I want you to decide you're going to work in a little team. Who's doing what? It needs to have a storyboard. So here's the structure. And we help them break that down and focus on it. We say, keep your phones away for 10 minutes. Let's make a storyboard of what you're going to make in your video. Then you're going to start. Then play it through. Then we're going to do some revisions, and then you're going to make a second video recording that's better. So I have to give them that structure. So making a video, I'm going to try and put that onto this framework in a second, okay? But that's one example of using tech to keep our digital natives happy. So we have first enhancement. This framework, sorry, I talked about this already to some people today. I don't think they're in here anymore. This is called SAMR. Okay, I'm going to define that as I go. This is Dr. Ruben Puentedura's framework. I think he's Hungarian. He came up with this from a couple of years ago based on Bloom's taxonomy. And people tend to know Bloom's taxonomy when I mention that in Russia, sort of lower order thinking skills, higher order thinking skills, being more creative at the top. So he adapted that to a purely digital framework to look at digitalized tasks. And he said the first thing you do, right, the most basic level, is substitution. You simply take something that was done non-digitally and you make it digital. One small advantage of that shift of the tool is that the students might go, oh, this is fun, right? We're now doing something we like to do. But that's pretty much the only advantage. It doesn't really raise the game in any way. So if I said, rather than get students to keep a diary on paper, get them to use their phones, there's no huge advantage necessarily. It's just still a diary. If, for example, students were writing an essay, and then we get them to do it on their phone, type it in, or on a computer, type it in, there's no necessary huge advantage. In fact, it's probably a disadvantage because it's a real pain to type things out with just your finger. Okay, so just on the basic level, that is just simple substitution, swapping in a bit of technology. But we could go one stage up into the A of SAMR, into augmentation. And now we substitute the tool, but there is a little bit of a functional improvement. And as I thought many of you, if we turn on something like Grammarly, for example, or a spell checker, we can also add something. We can enhance that task a little bit, right? So we augment the task. We add a little bit. And we can make something a little bit cleverer. Maybe if we had the student using a diary and we're getting them to set themselves alarms and alerts to like check their homework 2 times a night, or 10 minutes before the lesson, make sure they've looked at the topic of the course book for next lesson, something like that. We can actually enhance that, so we can augment. Transformation is where, because of the technology, we can significantly redesign what we're doing to the task. So maybe here now we're actually able to do a slightly different kind of task than we did before. And then on the last one, R, we've completely redefined the task. We're doing a task we could never, that did pop up, didn't it? We're doing a task that we could never have done without the technology. For example, make a video. Might sit down here, because kids could never make a video before. Maybe they could do a tape recording and play that back. But that wasn't quite as fun. They couldn't have added in special effects. And also, they can't post it on the internet for other people to see. Other people can't comment and then have an interaction beyond that. Right? So they now have the chances of opportunities. You could use things like Skype in the classroom. Has anyone tried that? So here with Skype in the classroom, you can potentially link up with another group in another place, and you can do a sort of video conference live between two classes on one topic. You can have your group of kids interview another group of kids in another country about a particular topic, attend virtual conferences, and make live comments. Okay, we don't have any feedback here, but I'm told that we're videoing this. Right? We could have video feedback and questions, so you could be sat at home in your pajamas, hello person in their pajamas, who's sending comments back and taking part in lessons. So very different types of ways of working that we ever had before. Much like Bloom's taxonomy, if we're going to use technology to power pedagogy forwards, we need to be working down to the M or R end of this. It's not just lots of things that look cute. Lots of things that look fun and are technological in your class that are just substitution and augmentation. They might create you more classroom management issues. They might keep your students happy some of the times, but they're not really pedagogically moving you forwards. They're not powering your lesson too much. So typically, if you're making choices all the time as a teacher when to use and not to use technology, you can probably almost use it all the time now. But you need to say no sometime and focus. So this gives you a little bit of guidance when to say no. If the technology is just there as just a little bit of fun, doesn't add much, it's possibly not worth doing. And it's time to focus on some more sort of classic skills and then use it. So you still need to ration that with the digital native. We all said we like Kahoot earlier on, right? Lots of hands went up. So would you say Kahoot sits on substitution, or it's a little bit further down? So is there anything else about Kahoot? I think the fact that you can work, if you work together in groups, it kind of gives you thinking time, but you're still then in the game, right? Everybody can see what you're doing as a group, but you have a little privacy. You can sort of hide at the same time as your public. So it allows a certain kind of interaction where you do get that gratification from seeing how well you're doing and competition, but nobody necessarily knows what your answer was, only you and your team. So you don't get sort of called out as, the kid who got that wrong, which often you'd have to do if you did it without the technology, if you had people putting their hands up. So this private sort of polling that we call, or quizzes like that, do allow us to work in a slightly different way that doesn't stigmatize losers quite so much. Again, it's a competition, so there might be that, but it makes for a slightly more friendly, fun competition as well. Plus, you've got music and pictures and all that, videos that you can add in, so it is very enhanced. So I think Kahoot sits on augmentation rather than substitution, so it's getting there. Right? So strong on motivation, but other things we can do afresh. Okay, I think we should take a 5-minute breather, and I want to talk about a couple of things on technology and then task-based learning when we come back. Is that all right? Thank you very much. Let's see you in 5 minutes, which is like 20 past? 25 past, let's call it. 25 past. I've just joined the few slides together so I don't take too much of your time to race through to the end. Thank you for the conversations in the break. I think we have to be out of this building by 9 because they turn the electricity and lights off. So what bar are we going to? So I talked a moment ago. Go backwards. Okay, it doesn't want to go backwards from that. I talked a moment ago about Puentedura's SAMR framework. And we were talking a lot about tasks and getting students to interact in that idea of 21st century skills. I mentioned this point a lot, and I just want to mention it again. Before I talk about task-based and project-based frameworks where we get students to work together. Something that used to happen with technology a lot in classrooms is exactly what we saw Edna doing. We saw Edna there with one computer in the corner. And very often we get one student to work on their own on a computer, particularly in things like computer labs. And we have this picture up on this side of the screen. And we have students, wonderful word Americans use for this, the students are siloed. The students are stuck there in a bucket on their own. Especially, okay, and students can actually end up doing that on their mobile devices as well. Right? I think that's what the point you're making, right? They can get there stuck. You know, like the person who is walking down the street like this, and maybe you're behind them in a taxi trying to get past. They're like in the phone zone. So we want to avoid, when we design tasks, when we work, avoid that kind of siloing like you have in the old school computer lab where they've got walls around them and they're stuck on one piece of information on their own. We want to try and use the technology to get students to interact. I was very happy when I saw this lesson. It's a lesson I planned. I saw a teacher teach it in California. Hadn't spoken to her before. It was in a book that I wrote, and I went and watched the class, and it was exactly like I dreamed it would be. So I took a picture. And she had tablets out on the tables. The students were looking at videos of different health problems. They were real internet videos, and they all had different solutions for back pain. And they were authentic things off the internet. I'd given the links already, and each group watched the back pain, they described them, and then they taught another group the solution for this back pain. They were all home remedies that people had just posted on YouTube. But it was a very fruitful lesson. They were talking about kind of procedures, parts of the body, pulling and pushing. It worked very nicely, but it was very authentic and very communicative. And it wasn't about one person being stuck on a phone. So we were having a bit of a chat just now about using videos in the class, even with very young kids. And here tablets, but mobile phones allow us to do that very well. And if students are socialized as they do that, that is very healthy for language development. So we want interaction. We don't want students stuck to one device. The tough thing there is to get students to share their phones a bit, which is sometimes tough, but it's the most natural thing in the world to show somebody something on your phone. I think we often want to do that. So that works. In our own classes now, at the end of projects, I'm not having students connect phones to the projectors anymore. It just takes too long and it's too fiddly. What I've got them to do is one person from each group takes the phone with the video on, goes and sits down with another group and just shows them naturally. And it's the interaction is more intimate. It encourages more conversation when they're watching it. If you're a long way away from a screen, you tend not to interact. If you're right there with it, and you go, oh, look, yeah, that's me. Look, I did that bit. And you talk about it as it's going along. So that's nice. So nice to get onto the right there. And I've talked a lot about BYOD a little bit earlier. So this is a 1950s language lab. Which picture is the 1950s? Which side? Yeah. And all those, they look like rats in a trap, right? They're actually kids at a military school outside Stanford in the States, I believe. And on the other side are people at an AI conference. They look exactly the same to me. Yeah. They're just sat there goggling at a screen on their own, like those guys are listening, these guys are looking, but it's very similar. So with Bring Your Own Device, you can get personalization, you can move very flexibly around, but you have to watch that you don't get this kind of siloing. And as we've already talked about, sometimes the teacher, like Edna, is a little bit scared because they don't see where their role is. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about something you can do with the technology in this project base. I'm going to cut through this fairly quickly, but I will send you the slides here. So, task-based and project-based. Do you recognize that one? PPP? And practice in the middle? Produce, yeah, production. So that's the classic framework of the communicative language teaching, right? So probably many of you have come across this before. And I won't criticize it or anything, but it has been criticized in many ways. And it assumes that the end of the lesson is production based on what you've been showing the students. And it's, in a way, it's a little bit teacher-focused because the teacher's decided what the input is. But we've already said with digital natives, perhaps we want to personalize. Perhaps we want them to make more of their own choices. And in that personalization and their own choices, maybe they're even choosing the language as well as the topic. So we potentially, when we're working with technology, it also fits with a more non-formal pedagogy or informal pedagogy. So PPP is actually quite a formalized way of doing communicative language teaching. I think somebody in the previous session was talking about, I don't know how they describe it, open and closed, or deep and light, light and heavy communicative language teaching. This communicative language teaching is quite structured. It's not deep. But another way, sorry, this is out of order. Another way to see learning, rather than a line, is a cycle. I'm a big fan of cycles. I'm a big fan of reflective cycles. So we could set up something we do as a task or a project where we get the students to study some input material, or maybe we start further down. Maybe we start the next stage where we get them to explore something, then immerse themselves in it, and to reflect on the language they've produced, and then study what they need to know, and then go back around. So the nice thing about a cycle is you can often start it at different points. So rather than start with that presentation, you can start with actually trying to produce some language and then reflect on it. So if we think in terms of a cycle, we could get students to do something themselves first, which is you produce, and then get them to reflect on what might be wrong. And remember, I talked a lot about you can video just about anything. I think I've been talking about that in this session a little bit, maybe not enough. So we can video work that we do, or if we make a product, if we make a video, we can look back at the video we've made and try and improve it. So if I say to kids, right, I want you to make a video about your town and why to visit it, they'll make it super fast. And then we say, okay, now I want you to look at the language. What structures did you use in there? What things from we learned in the last year have you used well? How's your pronunciation? And they, oh, that's not good, right? Let's improve that. Get them to improve that and work on them. So that's this reflect and study and go round the cycle. The words on here might be unfamiliar to you. They're words we use in our course books, so sorry if they sound a bit jargony. And I think you might have seen this before. I've kind of stolen this a bit from Rod and Jane Willis. They make it looks a bit like more like a hexagon. So at the pointed end, you've got the pre-task. It's a bit like the PPP there. Pre-task, you set something up. Then the task, that's most of the class, where the students themselves produce. And the students are collaboratively working together. And then at the end, this is always necessary, you have the post-task, which is the reflection and some more of the study. So here in this is a less formal framework because there's more unstructured time. You're not every bit of language, you're not presenting, giving, closed practice, then more open practice and production. You're actually setting up the task, and then you're saying, okay, get on with it, do what you want. You have to help structure it, you have to give them goals and so on, but you don't structure the language. So that makes this a less formal approach. But then post-task, you structure that now you're going to focus on the language. So that's typically how we do a task-based framework, and then that language focus, oh look, it's working now, comes in that post-task time. But the language focused on might be different for different students. That makes this potentially a bit scary. So you need to give the students reference tools, the way to look things up, and you need to work with them to be setting their own goals and seeing how well they're doing. That can be as simple as a list of the things in the CFR or your syllabus, or checking they've used the vocabulary that they learned last week. It can be quite simple. It doesn't have to be high tech, but they're making sure, yes, I've used this piece of language, or no, I haven't. And if they haven't, they ought to be using it, so they ought to rewrite. Rewriting, re-recording is one of the best ways of a learner improving. I'm sure there's lots of research in that about writing essays for Cambridge exams. You can read this, where if you say to the students, okay, spot your errors, you give them error codes or corrections like that, they focus on their own errors and they do self-correction. That is proven to be one of the most effective ways of students improving their language. So if they can do that on speaking tasks as well, by videoing and watching back, or on performances, presentations, posters and signs, so looking at what they've got wrong and making self-corrections to do better, this is very effective. Very similar for what I call project-based learning, except here in a project, they set something up, they spend a long time preparing it as a group before they present. And this presentation of their project or their video might be something that other students watch and provide feedback on. Okay, but the big difference between this one and this one is simply time. Forget the colors for a second, okay? I won't go that deep today. But a project could take place over several lessons, and students do several sets of revision. So one reason for the double coloring is this is where your structure comes in. So you set up, prepare, and present, but all the way through, you're getting the students to check what they've done, could they improve it, and then produce the improvements, and then do the next version. So I call these, when we're working with our own students, project checkpoints. So we set them a project that maybe lasts 2 or 3 weeks. We dedicate some time in lessons each week to check on the projects, and they set goals for where they should be, and they reflect, and they're looking at, okay, is this accurate? Have we used enough language? And they review as a group in each session. So they're setting up these, what I call goals and sprints each lesson. And the teacher's guiding them to do that, but the teacher isn't telling them what to do. Right? So it's just a framework. Okay? So this is a sort of a loose pedagogical guide for doing something that's more student-centered. Okay? So lots of chances to review. So each of those cycles is really one lesson, coming back to the students, checking what they've done until it's good enough to show it to other students at the end of term, for example, and get feedback from the group. If you just say to students, right, in 3 weeks' time, you're going to do a big presentation, off you go. In 3 weeks' time, most of them have done nothing. You need to say, right, in 3 weeks' time, we're going to do a presentation. Your first checkpoint is next Friday. Next Friday, I want you to show me the work and show me what you've got to do next to it. Right? And, okay, before next Friday, who's doing what bit? What's the key language? What's your storyboard? What's your topic? So you clearly actually give them the tasks of setting up each sprint, as I called it, between those circles, and each one of the sets of micro goals, and they define the micro goals. So you're giving them ownership and autonomy. So checkpoint, checkpoint, checkpoint. Okay, here's a sample task. We've all done these. A task is maybe something like find things in common with your partner. Here there's no language input to that. You haven't said use particular question forms or answer forms, and it can be very fluid. So it's not like the second P of PPP. It's just try something out. But that's a classic task, but it has those 3 parts, that yellow, orange, and blue, that set up the task, students talk, and students explain to each other what they've done. Another task, plan a dream holiday with your group, a bit bigger. Right, you set it up, you teach vocabulary maybe sometimes, you set the task up very clearly, they discuss, they decide what to do, and the class votes. But those sort of tasks, they fit neatly within one lesson. They practice one particular type of thing you're talking and thinking about. Whereas, if I skip through here, Sorry, I'm going to skip and come back to that one. Excuse me. Come. Okay. I wanted to give an example project. It looks like I've just cut that slide out by accident. An example project would be, for example, what I said before, make a video about Moscow for students, or you might say, okay, there's a student fair in Moscow in 3 months' time. Everybody needs to make a small video for a group of students. And different people in the class, you can decide what you want your video to be about, but it's for students who are coming to this international student fair. What do you want to tell them? And maybe your group says, okay, we want to tell them about great places to eat in Moscow. Your group says, we want to say how to navigate the Moscow public transport system. You might be interested in cultural spots you visit or something like that. So everybody's making a slightly different thing. Then the teacher says, okay, what is the outline? What do you need to know? What's your planning? And we get you to set your first goal. So you've decided the main topic, and you have the teacher helps you set up a framework to do that. But exactly the language that's in there is up to you as a group of students. But the teacher tries to keep a framework to it. So that's how we would work with a video project. Similar framework to a task, but it takes place over a longer time, and it has those cycles I mentioned. So nice things about any task, so thinking about the little ones, like discuss with your partner and find 3 things you have in common. They've got to have clear goals. They've got to be purposeful. They've got to be real, right? Different language strategies can be used, so you can ask questions or you can just suggest ideas. Different language levels can combine in task-based learning. That's one advantage of informal lessons, right? You don't have to teach everybody the same language first because different people work in different ways. So it's individualized, it's personalized. That can appeal very well to, we've all got multi-level classes, but it can also appeal very well to these digital natives who want to focus on different things at different times. They want to own what they're focusing on. It's creative problem solving. Again, tick, remember we said that was something digital natives wanted. There's authentic language use. It's not just classroom language. So if you're discussing something, even if you're deciding things in common, they might be the same kind of language that you could use out in the street. You know, when you're chatting to somebody in the line at Disneyland. It's student-centered because they can choose all of these things. But if you choose the topic well, it does reflect on what they're doing at the moment. So I think one of the tasks I didn't show there was design a seasonal menu or do a holiday brochure. Right, but just something that's done short within one lesson. So the teacher's very clearly setting the goal there. The teacher's actually saying, right, you're all going to do a holiday brochure about one place. So it's a little bit more restricted than a project, and it's within one lesson. Right, and I argue that you can get the cycle in different places, I've said, but I'm going to skip that. So a project is something a bit bigger than a task. But it's also different in other ways. A project always has a concrete goal or outcome. So it might be, for example, to design a poster. I talk lots about videos, it's very techy, okay? It could be a poster or a classroom newspaper or a play or a song or something like this. Even a model, right? But students work together to do it. So it could be, as a group, you make a model. This is another talk, it's advertisement for another talk David does. I talk a lot about using Lego in classes and what kids can do with Lego. They build models that they discuss themselves and they plan, right? Very low tech, but something the students have to collaborate to do. And they made a model, but they talk English while they do it and they decide, and then they present their model at the end. So it has a very concrete product. Lego, excellent tool for learning English with. It can be revised. Right, so that your video or your Lego model, they can adjust it a little bit if they disagree with it. Because if they can revise what they're doing, if they can revise their presentation, they can perfect it and they can perfect the language about it. That's important to get them to go back cyclically and review what they're doing. And of course, they want to revise it because they take pride in it. They want it to be the best one. And I don't know if you guys were doing about culture and you guys were doing about, what did I choose for you? It was very mean of me. I chose for you. You're doing transport. Are you guys doing food? Never, okay? So all doing something slightly different, which you can take pride in because you chose it. I know today I kind of threw it at you, but we negotiate a bit more, I think. And you're doing that, and you want yours to be good. You're also interested in the other ones because potentially they're all slightly different. They invite reaction from the other students. So if everybody did exactly the same thing, it's kind of a bit dull and classy, right? And it's just like, are you right or are you wrong? But if everybody's doing, like, oh, they did food. Oh, look, I get burgers there, you know, or I like that coffee or whatever. So it's a little bit different. Oh, I'm glad they told us about never change metro trains at that station, for example. So the students reflect on it. They reflect on their own work and the other students' work. Some classic examples are a poster, blog or website, video, PowerPoint, a performance, presentation. Here's a few that our kids did. You can still get this if you want it. The picture down the bottom right is EF's My Take video editor. If you write down EF My Take, it's a video editor designed for making very fancy, good-looking videos in class. We produced this 5 years ago now, and it was amazing when we produced it. But 5 years is a long time in the app world. There are a lot of other great things out there that kids will find themselves and make very good. So my latest tip, if you want to make videos that look super cool and very EF, just in case you want to advertise my company, why would you want to do that? If you want things that are very fun and EF, go on, write this down, go on Giphy, G-I-P-H-Y. I got a pen, didn't I? Yeah, I'm going to write it. Right? Giphy. And you can do this on, if you use social media, people have WhatsApp, right? Snapchat. Is that? Very often there's a thing to add stickers at the bottom. There's a little sticker. Put the sticker and choose Giphy. And you'll find lots of stickers. And if you start typing in EF, you'll find there are a set of cool little animations and stuff that we've put in there that you can add into anything. So these days we let students make completely their own videos, but they can add some EF items in there as well. So you'll find those. So video editors are great, but also low-tech posters are wonderful. Revise the poster, make it better before you stick it up, and you get the students to work on it in the same way, to present to others. Just to finish, so I mentioned task-based learning and project-based learning, and this is just a summary of the differences. Any task, like talk to your friend and find things in common, can be done, one person can be one sort of participant in the task. You can do it alone, you can do it as two, so very small group work. Whereas projects are usually done collaboratively within project groups. Right? So there's more student-to-student interaction throughout, and that's what we want to be happening in, sorry if this wasn't clear, in English, of course. So we're fostering this collaborative language and this kind of criticality as students collaborate. In a task, the teacher normally says, right, you're doing this. In a project, I gave a bad example because you should have come up with the ideas for the project that you're going to work on, so you own it for a few weeks. Class takes place in one lesson, and the project can go several lessons and sometimes out-of-class research. Series of stages, I mentioned those cycles. Outcomes are linguistic, but always on a project, you always want a concrete thing at the end of it. And projects have actually come really from what we do in mainstream school teaching. So STEM learning, CLIL learning, and so on, they're being encouraged to do more projects. So if you're doing that in your classes anyway, for science, technology, engineering, maths, or your colleagues are, this is just language teaching aligning with something that's going on in education generally. Okay? As opposed to tasks is just language teaching. I better get out of the way so that you can come and tell people more about EF. But there's a couple of references up there that you might want to copy down. I mentioned My Take. There are a few things here, but I will actually send you both of these presentations, and they both have reference pages. I skipped one reference page off just to reach the end. So I will send you this. People are still taking pictures, but I'm going to turn it off. Oh, I thought the last slide said, thank you very much, but it should have done.
Thanks, David. Да, от него буквально еще 10 минут. Я понимаю, что пятница, вечер, очень интересный семинар, много информации, и всем хочется уже пойти домой. Буквально 15 минут. Меня зовут Камила Сафронова, со многими я из вас уже давно знакома, рада видеть знакомые лица в зале. Но для многих, возможно, это первая наша встреча, и я бы хотела коротко рассказать о том, в целом, что предлагает ИФ для преподавателей, как офис в России, и в частности в рамках программы «Иностранные языки во время каникул». Буквально минуту, я сейчас включу свою презентацию у нас. Можно с флешки другую включить? Нет, нужно вернуться вообще в флешку. Будете переключать тогда? Так, вот она. Вот это, самое первое, да. Угу.
Just while we're waiting for that to come up, is that right?
Yeah.
I just put my email address. I'm sure we have a list of who's here, so we can send you stuff, but if you do have a quick question about something, I'm very happy to share something with you, or if you missed, I mentioned the previous webinar, the seminar that we did here, I'm happy to send you the details of that.
Могу, да, взять? Да, и мы подготовили для каждого участника Welcome Packs. В них вы найдете наши каталоги программы «Иностранные языки во время каникул» и небольшую брошюру, которая, в общем-то, отражает все то, что я хотела бы рассказать, буквально коротко, 5-7 минут. Это мои контакты, но я думаю, что каждый из вас получает еженедельную рассылку с моей почты, раз вы посетили нас сегодня, скорее всего, получили письмо с приглашением на данный семинар, потому что больше приглашений нигде не было. И по любым вопросам дополнительным связывайтесь со мной. Я работаю без выходных, отвечу в любое время, поэтому рада буду с вами связаться после семинара также. Коротко о том, что такое ИФ, где мы находимся как компания в мире, да, если в целом говорить. И история компании ИФ началась в 1965 году. Это шведская компания, которая как раз начинала свою историю с программы «Иностранные языки во время каникул». Небольшая группа учеников из Швеции поехала в город Истборн на каникулы, и, в общем-то, с тех пор началась история нашей глобальной компании. На данный момент мы являемся крупнейшей частной образовательной компании в мире. То есть если вас спросят о том, что такое ИФ и что мы предлагаем, это не только английский язык для детей за рубежом во время каникул. Это более 500 школ и офисов по всему миру, это 11 иностранных языков. Помимо английского это масса других возможностей, это и высшее образование. И для каждого конкретного студента, родителя мы всегда задаем вопрос, да, что вы для себя ищете. Это высшее образование за рубежом, поступление, поиск работы, мотивация ребенка учить английский. Для каждого запроса у нас есть решение, есть продукт. Поэтому имейте это в виду, и мы с радостью проконсультируем каждого ученика, родителя по любому из данных продуктов. Ну, в целом, чтобы было представление, да, о том, что это не только поездка на каникулы и языковые лагеря, это все наши продукты. В общем-то, можно их увидеть на этом слайде. Но расскажу более детально о продукте, о программе, которую я представляю. И как раз в рамках данной программы мы сотрудничаем с учителями со всей России. И большинство учеников, которые выезжают с нами по данной программе, это как раз группа учителей от Камчатки до Калининграда, которые собрали группу детей и поехали с нами в языковые лагеря. В 2019 году мы предлагаем для поездки данные направления. Это те страны, где английский является государственным языком. То есть нас часто спрашивают о том, есть ли у нас английский в Чехии, на Кипре, в Болгарии. Сразу отвечу нет, потому что главная задача нашей методики, про которую рассказал Дэвид, и в целом главная задача — это обучение английскому в той стране, где он является государственным. Потому что занятия и методика предполагают не только уроки в классе, но и вне их, чтобы они могли сразу закрепить полученные знания. Направления вы все можете увидеть в каталоге, но на данном слайде они отражены. Новинка данного года — это Сингапур. Это также английский язык, он там является государственным. Это Шанхай, Китай. Это программа, комбинированная с китайским и английским языком. Это 4 урока китайского и 2 урока английского в день. И также программа в Сеуле, то же самое, только с корейским языком. Поэтому запросы абсолютно разные. Сейчас очень выросла популярность и растет, просто идет семимильными шагами вперед популярность китайского языка, поэтому имейте в виду, что такая программа у нас тоже есть. Методика, о которой, так как доктор Биша, я не расскажу, но учатся ребята именно по этой методике и по нашим учебникам Fast Track, приезжая на программу. И учатся они в международных группах. То есть в момент к нам летом приезжают ребята из разных стран. Это не урок для русскоговорящей группы, которая приехала к нам на каникулы. Это международная группа, которая сформирована исходя из возраста ребенка и его уровня владения английским на момент начала программы. Каждый из них получает доступ в MyEF. Это внутренняя, как мы называем ее, социальная сеть для учеников, где они заполняют данные о себе, могут загрузить фотографии. Они видят ребят, которые также приедут с ними на тот же курс, то есть им проще выстраивать коммуникацию, когда они видели друг друга заочно на MyEF. Это это личный кабинет студента. И там же они проходят тестирование по английскому языку, данные которого отправляются сразу в нашу школу за рубежом, в одну из. И академический отдел школы уже делит их на группы обучения. То есть учатся они в международной группе, и этой же группы посещают activities. То есть мы очень подробно сегодня разобрали нашу методику. Перед семинаром для учителей у нас был урок как раз по системе EF Action Learning, и вы могли, те, кто был на этом уроке, наблюдать, как все происходит. Это был пример, но не совсем то, что действительно происходит, потому что учатся они, повторюсь, в международной группе, поэтому нет возможности у ребят между собой на русском что-то обсудить, потому что их стараются максимально миксовать внутри группы обучения. И это обновленная карта тех регионов, где работают учителя, с которыми мы сотрудничаем из года в год, последние лет 10, 15, 20. Это и Камчатка, это Якутия, и лично я очень много езжу по России, по школам, которые нас приглашают, и собираются огромные группы детей, да, то есть если вы думали о том, как собрать группу, далеко ехать, мы боимся рисковать, пожалуйста, карта, могу передать контакты учителей, которые с нами ездят десятилетиями, они могут дать вам какой-то, может быть, совет, но бояться не стоит, то есть ребята собираются со всей России, и вы не будете первыми, скажем, да, те, кто собрал группу и поехал с нами. И какие есть обновления, да, мы со многими из вас уже обсуждали данную поездку. Это бесплатный ознакомительный тур для учителей и партнеров, с которыми мы работаем в 2019 году. Пройдет он в Великобритании, так как в Англии у нас сосредоточено большинство школ, их там 11, и это школы как для юниоров от 7 до 12 лет, так и школы для ребят уже до 18. То есть на примере всех этих школ вы сможете понять, что такое наша методика, посмотреть на наши учебники, познакомиться с сотрудниками, с учителями, с активити-менеджерами в этих школах, посмотреть на сами города, если вы там еще не были. И сделано это для того, чтобы вам на будущий год было проще рассказывать о том, что такое ИФ, да, что это не просто какая-то компания и каталог, и вы не имеете представления о том, что это такое, мы приглашаем в этот тур. Условия, я думаю, тоже каждый из вас получал, так как это для партнеров, необходимо порекомендовать нам студентов на этот год, но мы с каждым готовы обсудить индивидуальные условия. Если вам это интересно, давайте свяжемся, обсудим и поймем нашу стратегию на будущее. Да? По маршруту это будут школы в Лондоне, в Оксфорде, в Брайтоне, в общем, все то, что находится, все наши школы в Великобритании. Ориентировочно это первая неделя июля, с 1 по 7, но даты мы точно определим уже после 31 марта, когда финализируем список участников. На данный момент их 10, и причем это абсолютно новые учителя со всей России, которые связались со мной. Мы провели либо личную встречу, либо вебинар для родителей. Я рассказала о наших программах. Родители согласились на данную поездку, мы собрали группу, все случилось, да, этим летом они едут. Поэтому не забывайте о том, что не нужно рассказывать родителям о том, чего вы пока не знаете. Я как сотрудник компании готова в любой момент провести вебинар, либо личную встречу, если это Москва или не только, для ваших родителей, ответить на все их вопросы, и, в общем-то, таким образом мы соберем вместе группу. Почему ИФ? Да, вы все это можете видеть в брошюре, но мы берем на себя полностью весь процесс, начиная от оформления визы, заканчивая возвращением домой. Да? То есть вам не нужно как учителю собирать какие-то документы, деньги и так далее. Все максимально просто. Ваша задача главная рассказать о такой возможности родителям, понять их интерес и связаться со мной. Да? Дальше мы определимся, что подходит конкретно вашей группе, направление, даты, цены, все это уже детали. Да? Главное понять интерес не учеников, а родителей. Да? Я всегда это говорю, потому что дети могут хотеть сегодня поехать, завтра они не хотят. Ну, это дети, да, то есть нужно просто пообщаться с родителями, понять, насколько они замотивированы, готовы на это, да, и после этого мы уже начнем работу. Что еще мы делаем для того, чтобы поддержать вас как учителя в наборе группы? Мы приезжаем в разные города и в Москве проводим EF Day. Это фестиваль английского языка, когда мы приезжаем с преподавателем, носителем языка, иногда это наши сотрудники наших школ EF за рубежом, и они проводят уроки для детей на английском языке. Все это так же, как и в наших школах за рубежом. Это викторины с призами, это семинары для учителей. То есть мы можем сделать это в вашей школе, если есть интерес у родителей, учителей и так далее. Также напоминаю о возможности протестировать вашу школу абсолютно бесплатно, проведя тест EF-SET. Да? То есть это абсолютно бесплатно. Вы можете просто отправить ссылку вашим ученикам. Они удаленно могут пройти этот тест либо в компьютерном классе, и мы сформируем для вас детализированный отчет по различным параметрам, скажем, знаний ваших подопечных, да, ваших учеников. Очень много в этом году учителей запросили у меня этот тест. Повторюсь, это абсолютно бесплатно, и этот тест отражает уровень, эквивалентный баллам, который получил бы ребенок, сдавая, например, международные экзамены TOEFL либо IELTS. Если вам это интересно как учителю, запросите у меня эту ссылку, и мы можем протестировать ваш класс, школу или просто конкретных каких-то ребят. Также мы провели супер успешную конференцию «Прорыв 2022». Многие из вас тоже на ней были. Также к нам приезжал доктор Биша, и не только. Да? То есть это была двухдневная огромная конференция. И мы будем проводить ее дальше, она будет более масштабной. Сайт остался, на этом сайте до сих пор доступна трансляция на YouTube, где сохранена запись этого интереснейшего фестиваля, конференции. Если вам это интересно, то зайдите на сайт и ознакомьтесь. Мы обязательно на этом сайте будем обновлять и добавлять информацию про будущие конференции и семинары. Мы, безусловно, будем их делать. И напоминаю про портал EF Teacher Zone. Это тот портал, где вы можете всегда получать обновления по вебинарам, которые проводит наш академический отдел. Какие-то новости для преподавателей, возможности личного развития курсов и так далее. То есть этот портал создан специально для учителей по всему миру, не только в России. И напоминаю о возможности стать лидером ИФ. Это наши любимые, дорогие педагоги, которые с нами из года в год выезжают вместе с группами учеников во время летних и не только каникул. Если у вас есть желание поехать именно лидером, может быть, в первый раз ездить лидером, а потом набирать группу, свяжитесь с нами, моя коллега обязательно расскажет вам о том, как стать лидером, что для этого нужно, и мы с радостью пригласим вас на работу лидером с нами летом. В общем-то, это все, что я хотела рассказать. Постаралась как можно коротко это сделать. Если есть какие-то вопросы, могу сейчас остаться, проконсультировать, либо связаться с вами по телефону после и обсудить уже ваши вопросы. Спасибо.